How's everyone doing? This is NZ again. I'm just going to do a quick video, um, maybe not too quick, but a video about my faith journey and my spiritual journey in relation to my sexual identity, my sexual orientation, and my gender identity. So I'm just going to tell a quick story about my coming out process and the church and how they all were very much related to each other. When I was in high school, I told my high school pastor that I struggled with same-sex attractions. That was the language I used at the time because I knew that being gay was not accepted in the Southern Baptist Church that I went to. When I told my pastor this, he immediately told me about Exodus International, gave me um, some reparative therapy books to read, and uh, told me that I could change, and gave me some very verses to learn. And I read all the books. Uh, I learned all the verses. I prayed to be changed, and nothing happened. Um, in college, so we're gonna fast forward a few years. But in college, I actually ended up going to Access International support groups, gays, to try and be more diligent about changing. At that point, I had already been asked to leave. Um, I had been given an ultimatum: either say that I'm not gay, or not be able to do the mission work that I knew that I was called to do. So I started doing ex-gay stuff, and it wasn't that helpful. I tried and tried and tried, and I began to become more and more unhappy and more suicidal to an extent. But also, I began to realize that I was not living up to the person that the divine had created me to be. And so I just went through those years until I came out as a lesbian, and stopped trying to change. But even as a lesbian, I didn't feel that I fit in, and I didn't feel that that was who I really was. But I just wasn't sure what it was. And then at that point, I had never heard of a transgender um, male. I had never actually heard of a transgender person. Period. Um, and so I didn't have the language for what I felt like. I just thought I was a tomboy or just a butch lesbian that didn't even fit in with other butch lesbians to an extent. So after college, and I did AmeriCorps and some other programs. While in America, I began to become more aware of trans guys, trans men, and that they existed, and that sometimes the sex, which is what we are assigned at birth, and our gender doesn't always match up. But even at that point, the only trans men that I saw were all white, and I, not being white, didn't think that that could be me because I didn't fit in with that. Uh, I didn't fit in with that group of people. So I went on the whole a year later, saying I wish that I knew one person of color that were trans, and then I could feel more comfortable becoming more the person that I was created to be. At this point, I had by this time I was already asked to leave the church that I was attending in Kansas City, and I was also told that I could no longer be a missionary through the mission agency that I was uh, with at that time. And so by this point, I was living in Minnesota, and going to a United Church of Christ church, Spirit of the Lakes, um, which was a very supportive place. My pastor describes when he first met me that I was just an angry person sitting in the back, which perhaps could be true, because I had a lot of things to be angry about, mainly having to hide who I was to everyone and everybody, uh, and a consistent set of being, which was not a very happy thing to do. Um, Finally, though, I met a trans guy who is considered my mentor, a guy of color, and he was like, "Yeah, because there's lots of people of color that are trans, we just seem invisible a lot. And that seems to be a theme constant, is invisibility. And so I realized that I could continue, I could start the process of becoming who I was. And so I did. I started to transition, which means I started to physically take the steps needed in order to, for my outside to match my inside. And that involved taking hormones. That involved the therapy in order to be able to replace on hormones. And for me, and not everyone takes these routes, but for me, that also involved having surgery to remove my breast and to have my chest reflect a male's chest. And that surgery in itself, for me, I describe it as a very spiritual moment. I have a tattoo of a phoenix. I don't know if you can see it, but it's also with my surgery date, and it represents for me sort of me rising from the ashes and becoming more of the man that the divine had created me to be. And during this whole process, my church body, my faith body, have been very supportive and is very supportive of my process. There are lots of communities of faith, one in particular, which is City of Refuge. There is a community of faith for trans people of color in particular, which is very nice. That I didn't know much about coming out, and I didn't know much about a lot of things, especially when as it related to being a person of color. And there are some unique aspects of coming out as a trans man of color. In a lot of my blogs, I talk about the process of transitioning from being one of the most sexualized images in America to becoming one of the most feared images in America. And that is one of those entities that I am learning to juggle and learning to figure out the best way to work through those images and those preconceived notions that other people have of me. Also, as a person of faith, I am continually learning more and more how to become the person that the divine had created me to be, and I believe that that is a black man of faith, which has a lot of images within itself, and has a lot of meanings within itself as a person who grew up as and was socialized as a black woman in the church. The roles are very different, and the expectations are very different. But yet, I think that I've given the blessing and the opportunity to live through both of these socialized images and to be perceived as both, and yet it allows me to be more graceful and more respectful, at least, of my sisters of color within the church, and also to be more empathetic of my brothers of color in the church, especially when it comes to rage, hurt, and pain. So, if you have any questions, feel free to always email me or contact me. My email address is Tanner, TANNERZA, @gmail.com. Thanks, and have a great day.